to be a journalist, you have to be part archaeologist, and you have to dig into the concepts and where it came from. For example, Jamaica. Jamaica had such a powerful influence. Kool Herc from Jamaica, Grandmaster Flex from Jamaica. That's not journalism. Journalism where you go into the heart, spirit, soul, mind, and essence of what something is, for example.
I mean, you know our history, you know, as original peoples and wilderness of North America, we have freedom history. That's just like, you have all of this, but you might not have a lot of things tangibly around you. Regardless, energy is still real. Energy, you know what I mean, can't be destroyed, it must be transmuted. So you have people who go through the crazy things now, but they find ways, constructive, creative ways, because again, we are creative beings. So we can, again, Ernie's talking about energy. So we're living in an energetic environment. So we absorb this energy now, and then we find constructive ways to do it, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Because there's many ways. There's destructive ways too. You know, I can get mad, I can punch somebody. Or I can get mad, I can hit the drum.
Right.
Right? You know what I mean? I can see some type of chaos going around, and I can absorb that and make more chaos in my environment, or I can draw something that, like, you know, might appear chaotic, but then you should see some art in it now. That's what hip hop really is. You know what I mean? That's one aspect of hip hop. You know what I mean? The creative aspect of it, as far as the things that people who are living this way of life, they create, the products that you see. That's what it's representing. People who are able to take this negativity, all these things, and then find a creative way to express that. You know what I mean? And that's the beauty of it. You know?
So, anybody else want to add on to that, or?
Nah, y'all killed it.
Okay, all right. maybe we should go into the
As a photographer, that's what you have to do. We're not photographing furniture, we're photographing people. And we're photographing energy, like the brother said about energy. Energy can never be created or destroyed. And like the brother said, what we do is we reform and reimagine and take that energy and make something of it. And those of us that had nothing, sister said she didn't have her own fancy toys. I had holes in my shoes and holes in my window. I had cardboard in my shoes and cardboard in my, so it left a space.
Man, like hip hop memories, I remember being young. One of the first ones that really hit me though, as soon as he said the question, like that memory sparked in my head. I can't really remember the age, but I just remember the first time I heard Tupac Changes.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like I was mad young, you know, you know. Obviously, it's not. I wasn't born when the song like first came out.
Right.
I when the time that I heard it, I was very young. I just remember hearing bars. I went to check my sister or something like that. Her boyfriend was playing it or something like that.
Yeah.
I heard the song. And I'm just taking in the bars. You know, and I'm just like, you know, he just starts up. I see no changes. All I see is racist faces. And you know, Tupac, he raps with passion too. So I'm just young, just hearing the song come out the speaker, like just feeling every bar. And he's like, cops give it down by the knee, bro, pull the trigger. And I was just like, yo, that's real, like. You know what I mean? And I was like, yo. And then even the hook, they're just like, they're just saying that's just the way it is, but they're just singing it to you though. And I'm just like, yo, this is so real. Like, yo, it's so real, so beautiful though. Like, so I mean, yeah, Tupac Changes, you know?
All right, let's pass it off to Carter. I want to get
I can't pass it through the
Well,
screen.
yeah.
Technology is crazy, yo. They got the through the screen, Drake. You know?
Yeah.
I think when you give children too much and fill them up with too much, there's not room for the creative. There's not room for them to process that pain into energy. And we have to, from the minute we're born to the minute we die, we have to get into that energy.
Yeah, to add on to that point, you know, there's a piece of it right there. Even when he says, you know, that's what we are, your own universe, because we are a reflection of the universe, you know, and when you break it down, it's deep, because again, when you said, from the moment we're born, we have to get into that energy, it's almost like, to add on to that, it's like a way you could also look at it, it's like we can't get away from that energy, because we are what we are, like, you know, like, you know, in the Bible it says, I am what I am. And it speaks like that when the man doesn't speak, this force, remember it's all allegory. The force that doesn't speak, when it finally does speak, it says, yo, I am what I am. You know? This again, it is what it is. So we are what we are. That's a deep thing too, because again, we are what we are. So from the moment that we're born, we have this connection to the source of all creation. That's where someone who's tuned in with the reality of themselves can access that creative energy. Whereas someone who's too caught up in the world might not it loses that connection to the true reality of self, which is God, you know? And that's when it gets deep or whatever too. This is where, this is what the true essence of hip hop brings you into, the reality of yourself, you know what I mean? The reality of God within yourself, right? So again, so then when he said that point where it's like, yo, the kids, we can't give them too much, he's like, yo, you're right. Sometimes you get too caught up in the world, you forget that you truly not even of this world. Right. We are in this world. We are not of it. We are deeper than this whole. You know what I mean? The planet. You know what I mean? What we truly are. The intelligence. When you say consciousness, you're talking about consciousness and awareness and mind and mental energy. The universe is a mental. Right. So again, what he said is so true. Because again, we can't be too caught up in the world or whatever. So that's why these art and hip hop, artistic things, allow you to get into the reality of energy. Because if you're a cameraman, you're rearranging light in an artistic way. You know what I mean? You understand certain principles of light. That's what a real cameraman would understand. You know what I mean? When you're a musician, you understand sound, waves, energy, frequencies, and you make them in harmonious frequencies and arrangements. So again, I want to get too deep into the build. You know, we break it down to 5%. That's how we do. We can't. My whole point was we can't get too caught up in the world. Right. We can't get too caught up in the world because we are not of the world. We're in the world, and what we truly are, which is again, he keeps talking about that word creator. You know that word creator. You know what I mean? Again, we have that power to create, that creation. We have the power to make life. So we have that creator power in us. You truly know yourself. So
I want to add something real tiny on what you just said. It's something that I heard when I was a child, and I've carried it with me forever. The term artist. And so many people are like, where does that term come from? And I was at a music store, and somebody said to me, the term artist comes from the saying, "Thou art God." And every single one of us, as a creator, we are creating just our own miracle. So it's just like every artist should have the idea that they have a sliver of godliness inside them, and they're just a channel for whatever they're creating.
Right. So,
I want to kind of try to crystallize something that you were saying, because again, you talked about, and this multiple times I've heard this brought up in the cipher now, of dealing with this idea of the lens, and cultural, and being able to see things, allowing you to go to this world and see things, right? So again, you're talking about hip hop. Hip hop is a culture. When you're dealing with the idea of culture, which is a way of life, really it's a system of understanding that's passed down amongst people, right? Because the culture is a way of life, the sum total of things that we do. So the way you walk, the way you talk. If you're a hip hop, you might walk, talk differently, everything because culture is the way of life. It's the way you live your life, right? So again, dealing with this system of understanding that's passed down now. Again, if you were to put some glasses on, right, and imagine you had like a blue lens on them, what would happen to everything you see?
right.
Yeah, it changes it.
It would change the color, right? So that's what happens when you immerse yourself into a new culture. You get to adopt that cultural lens, and it changes the way that you see everything in the world. So it's like you might see, like you said, you might be hyper aware of everything around you, whatever, but then you put your hip hop glasses on now, and you might start to see things a little differently now.
It's so true because when
that's what it is, because again, like even in the 5% we do supreme mathematics, knowledge, wisdom, or understanding. There's knowledge, which is the idea. There's the experience, which is in wisdom, because wisdom is crystallized experience passed on. And then you have understanding, which is the clear mental picture in the mind. The clear that you're able to see in the mind. So in 1, 2, 3, ABC, what you see, right? So again, we're talking about hip hop is a way of seeing the world that's been passed down.
So, you have some good.
Yeah. No, it's true because I kind of felt that when you said like putting on the glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, like even now, in my later years of life, when I have now Spotify instead of that tape, and my earphones, it's like putting on armor. I can walk through these streets with that music in my ear, and it's like an armor, right?
Right. Well, I just wanted, I just love how the conversation is naturally going into our questions. Before we talk about like the golden era and the 5% Nation one, because that is very integral to hip hop consciousness. I want to go back to like the topic of culture, because myself and Photo Valia right there, man, big up. Yeah, but like the topic of
culture is defined as a way of life.
And hip hop is a way of life for so many people all around the world. It came from a way of life and continued to evolve and to grow wings. Meaning that this dimension, the role that we must play, and also how do we deal with our history presently and prepare it for the future. So those are the elements of nation that I think that we are still striving after. One thing that I've always said, continue to say, reggae music has created the largest political party in the world. But people are just partying. And that's where the issue comes in. Just like hip hop. People have limited it to just a party, and this was my experience, so I'm going to express myself, not realizing that it's a nation that we're building. And we are just experiencing these things together that has brought us together. You know? So I honor you, Ernie. I hear your reasoning, and in contribution, this is the context that I would like to offer.
To give you
Way of life, hip hop and quality, you know. One thing, you know, again, one thing is 5% as we say is, you know, there's knowledge, wisdom is understanding. Understanding is a clear mental picture. And wisdom can be the words, ways, and actions. But sometimes we might get caught up in the words, and it'll stop us from getting to the understanding, which is the best part. Which is why we have to be careful when we deal with semantics, which is going back and forth about words, because it sounds like we are dealing with a lot of the same understanding, right? You know what I mean? Which is the same mental picture talking about this overall way of life that people are living, right? You know, so, but again, everything's 360 degrees, so even when people within a culture discuss that culture, they're going to discuss it with different perspectives, right? So, and that's just what's being said here, just to give context to that. So, even in so that's just one thing I want to say, just commenting on what I see going on, just different perspectives of the same thing, right? And then secondly, too, it's like everything is 360 degrees, and one of the principles of the universe is so as above, so below. So, you know, understanding over, inner, 300, you know, we just try to deal with the understanding, you know, it's the clear mental picture, regardless how we, you know what I mean? And then secondly, when some of these things are being talked about culture and hip hop as a culture being related to other things, I know right now there's millions of youth where going to, let's say a Jay-Z show or a Nas or a certain rapper show would probably be a more sacred experience for them than going to church at this point in their lives.
Absolutely.
Because hip hop is, and that's just a testament to my point of saying, again, not to get into the semantics back and forth, but dealing with how strong of a way of life hip hop has become. Because after people have been doing these different things and expressing their art forms in a certain way, it creates a whole new way now. You know what I mean? Now generations of youth that found this are living according to this way. You know what I mean? Taoist is you know, you have the Tao, you have the way. It's called the way. And to touch on what was very last spoken about, we live in a Western society, Western civilizations, and we live in a world where there's ancient cultures that exist, and we still have those connections to these things today. But what happens in this, where we live and where we are, is that sometimes they'll take one aspect of a potent spiritual system, cultural system, the aspect that can be most commercialized, and that's what we see. Like even when you're dealing with the Taoism and the understanding of yin and yang and the universe and all of this, you know, people don't even know about Tao and hear these words. That's not as common, but you know about yoga because they can sell you the yoga mats, and it's a type of thing that they can commercialize. So it's like, you know, you might hear, you know about the hip hop album, what does this, but you don't know about the struggle and the culture because that's not as easy to commercialize and sell. And with every culture, a lot of the ancient cultures and powerful culture that exists in the world, in the society that we live in, the aspect that can be the most commercialized is what we see of that. You know, and it takes someone who actually has the care for that, and it takes the respect, because to do the knowledge is to look, listen, observe, and respect. So you have to respect something enough to want to go into the history. You know?
So, Book of the Fibers, this kind of goes into
the illest rappers. They start to have this, like they see that they were apart at one point, or they were like they respect and study the gods, or like, but you study, you start to learn this. Who hurt? You start to, you know what I mean? He was around. It's like okay, but yeah. So this movement that came from 5% Nation, whatever, was very influential in incubating the energy that would be the atmosphere that this hip hop would come out of. You see what I'm saying? Or
Before you go to that question, like, but then like this was also kind of like commercialized too. You know?
I mean, yeah, like I said, after the point, remember, because when I look at hip hop from as a historian, a young historian, there's certain points where it's like, even when you watch certain videos, they're talking about it like, oh, this is a trend at first. Certain people talk about hip hop like it was a trend at first. Like it wasn't. Ernie, am I wrong?
Right. Let me give you some science. The reason that the record companies and the record and the money machine took on NWA and brought in the movie Colors and brought in the slackness, as they say in Jamaica, dancehall instead of reggae, was because they were afraid of the X-Clan. Poor righteous teachers, KRS-One, who said you must learn.
Yes.
He didn't say, I am you should learn. He said you must learn. And what happened was Public Enemy came and said it takes a nation of millions to hold us back. So what happened was that the devils that run this shit brought on NWA, niggas with attitudes. And they started bringing it, and now all through the East and West, throughout the United States and Toronto and Canada, you have gangs because of the seeds these dipshits planted that they gave power to, and that's why they were afraid, and that's why they subjugated the X-Clan, the poor righteous teachers, and all these other mathematically sound groups. They relegated them to the back and put the niggers with attitudes up front. All right. Now, what happened, and this is what you don't know, is that I worked with Ice Cube. We worked with them, with the Nation of Islam, with the Zulu Nation. We worked, and we got him away from that. And there are tapes of him on YouTube where he talks about he didn't know what it meant to be a man until he was exposed to truth and the God in us. Okay? So, if you look at NWA, originally it was done to poison us. And all these people would make it rain, and all this stupidity now that you see is to poison the youth, the minds of our children. And that's why in the 5% Nation you talk about you must be right and exact, because that's mathematics. 7 and 3 can't equal 11, 7 and 3 can't equal 9, 7 and 3 equals 10, which is a 1 and a 0, and the 1 is the universe. So you have to get into the mathematics. You can't be half-stepping and talking about
like this guy.
Slavery was an option or a choice. You can't do that. You say freedom or death, and you mean it. Freedom or death, sissy. All right, that's clear. Freedom or death. Okay, think. This is the greatest thing the universe has is our mind, which should connect to our spirit. So, do I, please, let me sit down.
Yo, that's like a line that I have. And this whole thing just reminds me of this one line that I have on one of these new records I carry. It's like, I said, the devil handing out millions to destroy the youth. Because then we start asking about the money and the commercialization. It's like what Ernie said, like, what he said is just like boiling down to that one line, where it's like, yo, the devil handing out millions to destroy the youth. That's what he started doing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that one line just boils down to that whole. I had a comment about that.
Oh yeah, yo, it's for everyone, please.
And, I'd like to look at things. There's many ways to look at things. Try to look at things in the eye, have a bird's eye view with that question. And it's like, you have technology and you have man. Man uses technology. Technology is a tool. Mind uses the technology, right? So it's like in the days of the radio, that was the technology that people were sending messages back and forth, right? Now, in the ways of life of the people that have this technology, there's only going to be a certain amount of time in your day for you to sit down and listen to the radio, right? Because like if people work, they do this or whatever, so naturally the content that is used and produced for that medium is going to match the way of life of the people. If someone was to make some, like, you know what I mean? If people are sitting, people are at home more, at home more, right? At certain times. And certain things are not, the information is not being spread, passed back and forth so quickly, right? So things are made that way, right? Movies are made that way, shows are made that way. There's long radio broadcasts from back in the days. Now they used to broadcast shows. But I know when my older guy, and he, you know what I mean, my educator, Warren King, he's talking, he's like, yo, we used to watch this show on the radio. I'm like, what do you mean, watch on the radio? He's like, yo, you can't see it. He's like, yo, you have to picture what's going on. I'm like, yo, this is crazy. This guy's mad old. But yo, people used to do that, right? And that's how the content was being made. Now, you can comment on the attention spans of those people, but the way that they were paying attention was because the technology meant that what they were seeing and consuming was being produced for them in that way. The technology of today that the youth are being born into allows for a much more faster transmission of data medium. So people aren't going to be sitting around for the transmission waiting the same amount like they were before. So therefore, an older mind who is used to producing content that's being consumed in a certain fashion just has to, because again, change is the only constant in the universe. So to go against change is to go against the universe, which is foolish, because you're not powerful. You're not powerful, see? So just go with it, right? So that being said, now there's different technology now. It's not about all these big, like, from one end of the view, it can look like, yo, the short attention spans are crazy, but you're not realizing, yo, they're growing up in a time where technology is different for them. They can tune into this, then tune into that. They can go on their timeline and flip, go through like this and see 10 different things. When a man would have to go to the library and go through, you know what I mean? Back in the days, I'm building my educator. Yo, when you want to show and prove 120 God, we had to do, yo, back in the days, you had to go to the library, meet up at the library, build. Nowadays, I can send like 3, 4, 5 PDF back and forth online with a brother back and forth. So again, I just wanted to comment and say that from one point of view, you can be thinking like, man, these youth and the short attention spans, how do we deal with it? Or you can look at it like, let's look at the atmosphere that these babies are growing up in and the technology that they're used to, not what I'm used to, and how can I engage them through the means that they're used to. And then guess what? You might have to change some of the content. You might change some of the length because the content that's being consumed on that medium is consumed differently.
I agree, and the last thing I'll say is I believe that with every generation there is positives and negatives. With taking it really slow, you can maybe absorb a lot more, but nowadays there's a lot of access to information. It's obviously faster than it's ever been in history, but how much is retained, how much is, like there's challenges.
Know better, so you can do better, so you can be better. Now, your question is talking about the minds of the children at a time later to come. And you're talking about how can we, in your seven generations, of dealing with how can we cause a positive change in the youth, but really everything starts from the mind. So it's about changing the minds of people at a future time. That's what you're talking about. What can we do now within the realm of hip-hop, thinking about what's going to come generations down the line, right? And it's a very simple description, put it like this, okay? You know they say monkey see, monkey do, right? Also, 80% of what we remember is from what we actually see and look at. So 80%, because we have a lot of memories, you might remember some, but a lot of your memories is that what you actually look at, see, right? Now, monkey see, monkey do, right? Now, to know yourself, people keep talking about know yourself, know self, know self. The highest level of self-knowledge is to be one with God, right? Now, when you do and have that knowledge and that understanding now, like it's deeper than all this hip-hop shit. It's deep. I'm just talking about life. And the point is, it's just like this. For the babies now, they have to see that. It's that simple. Because 80% of your memories are going to be formed from what you see. And it's monkey see, monkey do, right? So that's why they spend so much money to put negative images in front of our face. That's why when a person is trying to be a great man, and remember, when you truly know yourself, you know it's God. So being a great man, you just need a great godly person. You know what I'm saying? And remember, when you go into the Bible, you read the allegory of the Bible, and Jesus says, don't marvel at that which I could do. He's like, hey, you came to bring us, he's like, I came to bring the kingdom of heaven on earth. They're talking about, he's like, I came to bring this here. You gotta die. You don't want to die, right?
It's in your heart.
Here,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So again, but remember, so it's about, so what he's just saying, I came for you to see God now, so that you can be God now. So the children need to see God for him to be God. So you need to see people being godly. You see men being men. Like Ernie said, they put certain images up on the TV, see certain things. You see what I'm saying? When you look at certain great leaders that were killed, they were killed because they were just being great men. So if you're really talking about what can we do to do this, that's why we talk about, as 5%, we talk about being out there in the streets. It's easy to say, yo man, these kids in my neighborhood are doing this. How many times have they walked by your building? Have you stopped them and been like, yo, peace? And have you educated yourself enough to have anything to give them of value for them to be better? But you want them to say something about them? So you have to get the knowledge for yourself, get the knowledge, wisdom, understanding, have a clear mental picture for yourself, and then go out into the streets. And the babies need to be taught in the streets because the devil is working hard. So until we as a community work harder than the devil, how are we gonna win? So it's that simple. People need to see God, need to see men being men, they need to see women being real women. So that's it. That's it. And that's the only way to change the future. You can tell me, sit down, we can go back and forth a million ways. I'll even put my foot up and all that. We can go back through many ways, but that's it. That's it. That's the way. The way is to teach the babies.
That's it, it's simple, man. Monkey see, monkey lead by example.
That's real. That's
All right,
real.
well, on that note, man, like, yo, we're gonna open up the floor, man. If there's any questions, observations, things that you enjoy.
The first thing, and it's beautiful that it's good I went last because I kind of feel like it just makes everything 360 degrees. The first thing before I even get into my point is that, like, when we're children and we're in the store with our parents, and sometimes we reach for certain things, and our parents are like, nah, and then it's like, they're like, when you're older, you'll understand. And it's like in that moment, we were mad as hell. But then when we're older, when we get older, we start to laugh at ourselves, like, wow, I can appreciate how hard it is for my mom to even have to pay the bills. So you can more appreciate life itself when you know and have the knowledge and the wisdom. So that's my first point. First of all, the understanding of life, which is the best part, which is a clear mental picture, that's a chamber that you have to reach after you go through the knowledge and the wisdom, which is a process. That's why they say the understanding will come in time. Because there's no way the child can just come here knowing all that. He has to go through the knowledge and the wisdom to attain that understanding, right? So there's certain things in life that are going to come in time with the understanding, right? But some people are able to pick up on it quicker, right? The lesson that you don't learn keeps repeating itself through the situations. But anyways, right? So there's that. You have to understand that's the dynamic of life. Just like the child in the candy store. Going through life is going to give you an understanding to be able to have an appreciation for life, right? So there's that. Secondly, another thing that connects everybody's points that everybody was talking about, it all goes down to mindfulness and contentment, right? These are two things that will have you being in heaven, which is the state of inner mental peace, which is what we all seek for, because we all seek for a feeling or a state of contentment, no matter what we do, right? Now, you talked about dancing and putting your feet on the earth, right? You're talking about rapping, water, and all of these things, and even beautifully, Ernie talked about being a photographer, and he captured it eloquently when he's talking about, if you take the picture a little bit too early, or you take it too little bit, you miss that moment. Now, that's the thing. We're infinitely going through that moment. That golden picture moment, that's life itself. So when you are aware, it comes back to consciousness, awareness. When you can be truly aware of the moment and be in the moment. But sometimes you have to get out of your house, or you might have to connect with nature to get into your mind, in life. Sometimes you have to go deep within your own mind and create a lyric. Sometimes you might have to go close to a body of water, because the earth is 3/4 water, and so is our body. So we feel that connection with the earth when we're around the water. But long story short, it comes from awareness, right? So you have to be aware in the moment. But just like that child, though, you have to also learn. Because the child, no matter how aware the child is, he has to learn. Which means you have to go through life and study. Because after you go through life and you have to study life, that's how you can appreciate it. So after you go through life and study your own body, you'll learn and appreciate it more. You study your mind, you'll learn and appreciate it more. That's why we 5%ers, our way of life is not Islam, just religion. It's I study life and matter. I study life and matter. That's how I'm able to understand my connection to all things around me and understand my place in relation to all things around me. So until you study life and matter, you will not understand your place in life and matter, and you will feel out of place. So again, you have to study these things and reconnect with the earth. You know what I mean? Because the earth, like they say in the Bible, it says the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. That's why, you know what I mean? The more the earth is in your diet, the longer you probably stay on the earth. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I think you go with that. Long story short, contentment, mindfulness. And understand that you are the child, because you have to be, you're born again a new day every day, right? So again, you have to learn. You know what I mean? Learning and study is what gives you the appreciation for life. Because until then, you're just going to be like a kid in the candy store, getting mad because things aren't going your way. But you understand life. And a lot of people are like that because they're youths in their mind. But you have to grow up and be an adult and understand it's real.
Super peace, man. Yo, super blessed, man. Big up to everyone, man. That concludes, the end of the session.
For the last hour, I've been looking at it, trying to figure out what it is.
We put the 7 on your back.
That's the 7 is because 7 is the 7th letter, so the 7 stands for G, so that's God.